Alongside Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price. Tennessee has its new football coach, Brent. It's Josh Heupel. We talked about this last night as we continued to hear his name emerge more and more. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And 27-6 in 3 years at UCF, he's headed north to be the head coach on Rocky Top.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this was a situation where it's not that Danny White targeted Josh Heupel from day one or anything like that, Austin. I think this is a case where Danny White and the Parker Group cast a pretty wide net to see where the interest was and where things were. And as things came around and coaches said no thank you, or they interviewed some coaches, this thing late yesterday afternoon, got back to Josh Heupel, a name that Danny White's very familiar with, someone I'm sure he's very comfortable with, a guy who does have some SEC knowledge, having worked at Missouri for years, the offensive coordinator, and is Tennessee's next coach, an offensive coach, which is what we said from the get-go, right? That's where Danny White would land, as with an offensive-minded coach, and he certainly has that in Heupel.
No doubt about it. And, who might he bring with him to help lead the offense? The first name you're going to hear is Jeff Lebby. I don't know if they can get him from Ole Miss, but I'm sure Lane's antennas are up. And, I know Lebby just signed a new 2-year extension with Ole Miss back at the first part of January, but it's at least somebody I think that they will really target. I think another name would be Kendall Briles. And the other, OC would be the guy he's got currently at Central Florida, and potentially could bring him as well. But those are the top three names with Lebby leading the way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Lebby's a guy who had great success in year one at Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin. He had great success at Central Florida with Josh Heupel. There's no doubt about that. There's been rumblings that Lebby might be interested in looking around, and then he obviously signed the extension or the new deal with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. So we'll see what happens there. I'm assuming that Josh Heupel and Jeff Lebby have left things on good terms when he left to go to Ole Miss. Obviously, Jeff Lebby, Kendall Briles, there's a relationship there. They, in terms of, family, and there's no doubt that Josh Heupel knows that system, knows that group pretty well. So we'll see where they go there and what that staff looks like. I think the bigger question for me, Austin, is what's the defensive side of the ball going to look like?
That's right.
Josh Heupel can score points. Now, look, I think Jeff Lebby would be the marriage. If you're a Tennessee fan, that's what you would like to see, just because of the success he had this year at Ole Miss in his first year with that offense in this league. But I think the bigger question is, who are they going to tab? How are they going to structure a defensive staff to stop teams in the SEC? Because you're going to have to play a little bit of defense in this league, and who wants to come play and coordinate a defense along with Josh Heupel? I do not anticipate it being Randy Shannon, who's been at Central Florida with Heupel. I don't think that's a move that would take place. That's my biggest question this morning is who's going to be his defensive coordinator? How's that going to work?
And I don't know if you can convince Kevin Steele to stay. I don't
try.
think so, but at the same time, I would try. I would do everything I can to get him to stay. And that includes, doing a little begging. I mean, they need a guy that's got SEC experience to lead the defense. I think I'd try to still go get Rodney Garner. He still doesn't have a job, Hubs. That makes a lot of sense. Does Willie Martinez come with him from Central Florida? I think that's possible because of the, ties to the fact that he's coached in this league, coached here under Butch Jones. That would make some sense. So, I'll be interested to see. Every coach has a little Tennessee flavor on their staff. Can they convince Jay Graham to stay? What happens with T. Martin? He's on an expiring deal. Do they look at a guy like Montario Hardesty potentially if Graham does intact and indeed go to Alabama? Lots of stuff you can look at. The one name that I think that and I think this is important is the offensive line coach. And I think Coach Ellerby would be a probably the guy that I would target for Tennessee's offensive line coach.
Yeah, and again, I think the other thing too is you're recruiting. From a staff standpoint, you've got to get some recruiting ties into the SEC footprint. That Josh Heupel in Central Florida did not recruit the state of Tennessee while they were down there. They weren't active in the state, so they've got some quick catching up to do in the state because we know how important this state is in the class of 22, Austin. And so how quickly can they get off the ground running there? What kind of staff can he put together with some SEC ties in recruiting? that can get him out in the footprint and get him out and about in the recruiting world, because they're going to have to hit the ground running quickly in recruiting, particularly in the state of Tennessee. I know they can't go on the road, but they've got to work on relationships right out of the gate there, because this is not a situation where a guy like Ty Simpson's been recruited by Central Florida. Now he's going to like this offense, I think, because it puts it's such a quarterback friendly and stat friendly offense, but there's no tie and no relationship there with the Simpsons. So how quickly can they get established in the state of Tennessee, and who can help them do that? Do they keep somebody on staff? Do they bring somebody in that knows the state and that type of thing, or has worked in the state in recruiting? I'm from that standpoint, he's got to get a really strong recruiting staff to go with this. Now that's all down the road. That's not going to happen today, but that's something that's got to happen quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And the offensive line coach, Glenn Ellerby, for those people wanting to do a little research. I'll be interested to see how all that transpires. I do think that they're already working on recruiting early this morning. I know that sounds crazy when you factor in everything that's happened over the last 12 or 13 hours. But I think when this thing got real, they kind of started to mobilize and work towards some early targets. I think some phone calls have already been made, and they'll continue to be made throughout the day, with an announcement from Tennessee coming likely very, very soon.
Yeah, and I think you have to. I don't think. I mean, you cannot waste any moments, and you've got to get going as quick as you can. And we know the plane is, been sent to Orlando to pick them up, and get back to get them up here and get an announcement, get them in front of the team. I think Danny White very much wanted to tell the team first, and that was his goal in this. He said that in his press conference, and that's why there was the team meeting called this morning. And then I think the announcement will come, very quickly from that, formally from Tennessee. And then it's going off to work time for Tennessee's new football coach. And again, lots of curiosities as to what the staff looks like. But he checks the boxes of what we thought Danny White was looking for when this search started, Austin. And I think that's the biggest thing to take away. Yes, he's familiar. Yes, it's, he's circled back. And a lot of people are going to say, well, anybody could have hired that guy. He wanted an offensive-minded football coach as his head coach. And that's what he's gone and done this morning with Josh Heupel.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I know the athletic director White wishes that it had not leaked out before this morning, so he could have told the team first. But things happen, so we'll see. We'll see where it goes from here. Who Josh Heupel is able to add to his staff, and then what kind of early noise can they make in recruiting over the next month and a half? Because I do think the next month and a half are very critical for Josh Heupel's early tenure here at Tennessee. He's Brent Hubbs. I'm Austin Price. Josh Heupel, the new football coach for the Tennessee Volunteers, starting this 2021 season right now.